First, let me just say thanks for this wonderful opportunity to come to Military Park on this day to share about my book. My name is Steven Eugene Carter, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and actually serving as the senior pastor of the church that I grew up in, Mount Arad Church in Brooklyn, New York. And I recently wrote a book called Rejection from Rejection that deals with how do you move from self-rejection to self-acceptance. And it's birthed out of my own story of being adopted and not realizing I was adopted until the age of 13. And I felt rejected by my biological parents, and I felt betrayed by my adopted parents.
Wow.
For not telling me. And I lived a lot of my life looking for security. As a result of that, you know, I felt insignificant, so I decided I wanted to pursue education to validate myself, and attended, you know, Morehouse College in Atlanta for my undergraduate degree, and Duke University in North Carolina for my master's degree. And I made the assumption that these degrees would validate me and fill some voids, but it still didn't. To back up, I was born September 23rd, 1975, and I was born as a sick child with 5 surgeries within my first 5 months of living. I had a hole in my heart, twisted intestines, hernia, and my biological parents pretty much left me to die in the hospital. And from what I've been told, no one would adopt me. They would come to get me, and they discovered that I was sick. The doctors would encourage them to adopt another child. And same case when my parents came, they put me on television as an unwanted child. And my parents saw it, and so that when they went to adopt me, the doctor said to them, "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you should look for another child, because by the time you finish the paperwork, Steven is going to be deceased."
My God.
And my father asked the doctor, "Well, what happens when this child dies?" And the doctor told my father, when he dies, he'll be buried in a place called Potter's Field for unidentified bodies. And my father and mother made the decision. They said, "We're going to adopt him anyway, so that when he dies, he'll die with a home." And that's 38 years ago, and I'm still alive. So we're excited about that. But as a result of learning that I was adopted at the age of 13, I didn't know. My cousins used to always tell me I was adopted, I'm not blood, I was dropped off by UPS, my parents are paid to keep me. And I would often ask my parents, "Dad, Mom, you know, they telling me I'm adopted. Is that true?" And they would always encourage me and say, "Boy, you're not adopted, don't listen to them." And so I believed my parents.
How did joining a gang help or make the situation worse?
It didn't help. It was like a high school gang where we would get on the train, ride from Manhattan to to Brooklyn, and I was in the gang but not in the gang.
Gotcha.
It was kind of like I was
like
a part,
crew.
like a crew,
Yeah.
but I was never the one to actually commit the act. And I'll never forget a day when I was on the train. I guess they realized, hey, Steven hasn't done anything yet. And they said, "Man, listen, this guy's coming through the train, coming through the carts. We need you to take his chain, and then we're going to do whatever we have to do." And I was scared, so I prayed. I literally prayed. I said, "Lord," in my own head, "if you get me out of this, I promise you I'll leave it alone." And as soon as the train stopped and the doors opened, 2 police officers walked on the train. And when I tell you I was happy to see police officers, and that saved me from that embarrassing moment where I had to either show up or deal with the consequences of it. But after that experience, I parted my way from hanging out with them and continued to just move on, and realized that if I headed in that direction, I was going to get in trouble. Because although I felt betrayed by my parents for not telling me I was adopted, I knew that they loved me, I knew that they cared for me, and I knew that they would do whatever they could to make sure my life was filled with blessings. But I didn't even let them know I was battling those feelings. As a matter of fact, my father nor my mother knew until recently. In January this past year, I sat down and talked with them prior to putting the book out to let them know everything that was going to be in the book. And they didn't know that I dealt with this. My father even told me, he said, "Son, as I read your book, I have to put it down from time to time because it brings tears to my eyes to realize that the son who was raised in my house was going through all of this, and I didn't even know. Because as children, when you feel rejected, you don't know how to articulate that.
Right.
And if you're not careful, your childhood pains live into your adulthood life.
Wow. Wow. So when were you introduced to a spirituality form of dealing with this situation, or had you always belonged to a church?
Oh, I was born and raised in the church. Born and raised in the church. My father was a deacon. My mother was a deaconess. I grew up going to church at least 3 times a week.
Oh my!
And so I had promised God that what I didn't promise God, I promised myself. As soon as I get to college, I'm not going to church anymore. And so when I got to Atlanta, Georgia, when I arrived in Atlanta, Georgia, I missed one Sunday service, and the negative feeling that I had on that day, I called my parents and said, I didn't go to church today. I promise you I would never miss again. And then I started preaching at the age of 18, and worked in Houston, Texas on staff at Brentwood Baptist Church after graduating from seminary, and then was called back to Brooklyn to pastor my home church. And coming up in September 28th, we'll celebrate 10 years of being there.
Okay, so for the people who are just passing through, we're sitting with Reverend Steven Eugene Carter, and he is the author of this new book called Resurrection from Rejection. Phenomenal story, phenomenal testimony here. You know, he talks about being adopted, overcoming that situation once he found out about it, spiritual development. It's a lot, and I can relate. Is there anyone else who can relate to any of this? I mean, this story almost parallels my life. I'm like, oh my God, wow. He's telling my story.
Wow.
So, like, I'm just, you know, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Does anyone have any questions for Eugene? Any questions about how he? I mean, because this is a big breakthrough right here.
Yes, it is. Yes, ma'am. The title of the book. A few years ago, I was sitting with a friend trying to come up with some titles and trying to dealing with adoption, knowing that I wanted to write a book on adoption and my own feelings. She thought of the title Resurrection from Rejection, and I grabbed it and I said, yes, I'm going to take this. And I held it to the side for about 2 years until I started writing the book. And the purpose of the title is, when you feel rejected, you pretty much living in a grave, a self-created grave. And you throwing dirt on top of your own grave every single day. And the resurrection is when you deal with the feelings of rejection, isolation, abandonment. As you start to deal with those feelings, you slowly evolve out of your grave life, and you become resurrected. So the title comes from moving from self-rejection towards self-acceptance, or to put another way, moving from deadness to being alive.
So I have another question. How did I noticed that I think you're here with someone? Is that your wife?
My wife, yeah, she's right there.
Hi. How did you meet? How were you able to open up to another person? Because I think that's something that, you know, when we deal with rejection, it's like kind of scary.
Exactly.
You know, opening up and sharing yourself with someone. So
how she and I met, I was preaching in Houston, Texas, and she worked at the church, and when she walked in, I was like, wow, you know, and I told the pastor, I said, that's gonna be my wife. And he was like, man, you crazy.
You heard it here first. Men know right away. It does not take 10 years.
Exactly.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
But hold on. She rejected me.
Oh!
She rejected me. I tried to talk. She told me she don't see me like that. And I told her it's not how you see me. It's how I see you. And she and I became friends. She kept turning me down. And I would date people and tell her, hey, listen, I'm only dating until you decide to be with me. And she and I became close friends where we talked about everything, and I was able to trust her. And then when I saw how she talked about her father, she loves her father, and that really made me feel like, okay, this is who I want to be with. But she still gave me a hard time, would not agree to being my girlfriend.
As she should have.
Yeah, she said, I'm just cool with being friends. I said, at my age, I don't need any more friends. You know, I'm good. You know, and we just kept on talking. And I said, let me know when you start liking me. And one day she told me, and we started dating in December, engaged in March, married in April.
What is that phrase? Beats rejection. What is that? Persistence beats.
Oh, persistence pays off all the time.
Yeah, persistence beats resistance.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what it is. So all of that resistance got beat down.
Yeah, I just
awesome.
knew.
She's beautiful. You guys
yes,
are beautiful.
She is. Yes,
couple.
thank you so kindly. Thank you so. God, and then I prayed. I was like, Lord, give me who I need, because I had dated for so long, but I never really allowed myself to love. She's the first time I've been in love. I've never been in love. I was just like, I couldn't deal with it. But I knew when I was praying for a wife, God was like, you're gonna have to make yourself vulnerable. If you want real love, you gotta risk being hurt, and that's when I had to open up to her.
Do you think that fear of being hurt stops a lot of families from joining and coming together as one?
Yes, fear is the #1 paralyzer. Fear paralyzes us in so many areas of our lives. It can be business, it can be ministry, it can be, people fear failure. Still to this day, I fear failure. Sometimes I'll mess up on something, and my wife will ask me, did I do that? And I'll say, no, I didn't do that. Because my fear is that I don't want to fail her. But not realizing that it's all right to, make mistakes, it's all right to fail, it's all right to do X, Y, and Z. But we carry that in so many areas of our lives, be it business, family, church, co-workers. We try to present this perfection lifestyle, and whenever you try to present that, you find yourself messing up, because it's impossible to maintain that which you are not, which is perfect.
Great response.
Yes. You can purchase the book immediately over there afterwards, or my wife can give you the book, or you can go. You can purchase it immediately right over there afterwards. $20 for the book. Yes. And I'll be more than happy to sign it. Yeah, I'll sign it for you.
So do you have any children?
Not yet,
Okay.
but trust me when I say we're working on it.
That's good. I noticed a reoccurring theme as you talked about dealing with situations, whether it was the gang or whether it was maybe fair relationships, you resorted back to God.
Yes.
Do you think that's important? Would you advise young people or just people in general to, use the spirituality to...
God has to always be the foundation of everything in your life, because that's the only source of peace. There's a line in scripture where he says, I'll give you peace that passeth all understanding. And my argument to that text is that the reason why God gives peace that passes all understanding is because there's some things he cannot allow us to understand, because if we understood it, we wouldn't have peace. So God says, I have to give you peace, although you don't understand, so that you can continue to walk in faith, which is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen, or the evidence of things you don't understand. And so I think growing up, there are a lot of parts of my life that I did not understand, nor could I ever understood, but God gave me peace in it, and then he gave me a family to help me through it. So peace and God is the ultimate source above every other book. And anyone who reads this book, although it's not written as a faith book, it's written as a practical book, but when you read it, you can't help but see the undertone and the underlining that God is the foundation of every breakthrough I've had in my life.
I agree. He's able.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so does anyone else have any more questions? I mean, these are great sources here. You guys ought to take advantage of this. I'm trying to think of any more questions myself. This is awesome. So, what do you have any advice for anyone who?
Yes,
okay, you have another one. Great.
How did I come about being adopted? I had no play in that. I was born. No, I was adopted at birth. I was adopted early on in my birth, way before I was 1 year old. I was adopted. I was adopted right from the hospital.
Well, you definitely appear to be a very well-rounded person. Thank you for sharing your story here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
If anyone, again, has any questions, speak now. Any questions on rejection, something you've been wondering about? I think he gave us some real good jewels with, you know, just seeking God out. I think that spirituality is important. And I think that's what a lot of us are missing, especially the young folks. There's so many different controversies that exist with religion. I think people have decided to kind of just stay away from it, and I'm not sure that that's a good idea.
Never. You have to deal with it. And a lot of kids and children are dealing with it today, feeling rejected, and they don't even realize they're feeling rejected. As I said, although I felt rejected, I didn't realize how deep my rejection was, or the feeling of rejection was. And if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you sooner or later.
Wow. Okay, so let's give it up for Reverend Steven Eugene Carter. Please give him a round of applause. And again, please purchase his book. Get his information. We want to make sure that we support our authors that come through and, you know, commit to the work of writing about their story, sharing our story, because these are the types of things that change and transform our communities. Thank you once again.
Thank you so kindly for having me.